Today we're going to start Unit 3, which is trigonometry. So we're going to be doing trig for the next couple of units, actually, or the next few units. So just a basic background on trigonometry. Trigonometry is the relationship among the sides and angles of triangles. That is kind of the foundation of trigonometry. It has to do with ratios of sides of a triangle and an angle. It has a ton of applications. Trigonometry is actually one of the math components that I actually used when I was an engineer at my job, but it's used in astronomy, navigation, surveying, sound waves, rotation, vibrations, light waves, really anything with waves, and there are a lot of other applications as well. So in trigonometry we're talking about angles. There are going to be two different measures for an angle, both degrees and radians. The radian measure of an angle is going to be incredibly useful for us next semester in calculus. And we will use it a lot this semester as well. We'll see when when we want to use one over the other. And then also the other thing that we want to talk about real quick before we get into the lesson is angles are usually denoted by Greek symbols. So a lot of times in algebra, the variables are denoted by letters of our alphabet. Usually letters at the end of the alphabet are variables, and letters at the beginning of the alphabet are constants. So like A, B, C are usually constants, think about the Pythagorean theorem, and X, Y, or Z are usually variables. With trig, we usually use Greek symbols to denote angles. Now that doesn't always mean that it has to be true. We will see a lot of times, especially when we get to the graphing of trig functions, that we're just using X and Y again. But a lot of times we use Greek symbols. Alpha, beta, theta is the most common one, kind of like X is our most common variable that we use. Theta is the most common variable we use for an angle. Alright, enough rambling. So now today we're going to talk about first angles in standard position. So first we want to make sure we understand the parts of an angle. So two words, initial. The definition that I found online was of, relating to, or occurring at the beginning, or first. Terminal is a point or part that forms the end. These are going to be important because when we talk about an angle, so let's draw an angle. So if this is my angle theta, then this is my initial side, and this is my terminal side, and this point right here where they meet is what we call the vertex. Alright, so we want to make sure we understand those phrases, especially initial and terminal side. Those are going to be used a lot throughout this, so we really want to make sure we understand that. Also, notice that if we have an initial side and a terminal side, and this is going to be crucially important as well, that means there is a direction to the angle. So notice I intentionally drew this with an arrow going in the direction from the initial side to the terminal side. If I draw the arrow in the other direction, then the initial side and the terminal side are going to switch. That's going to be important as well. So, what about an angle in standard position? So this is what we're going to use most of the time, or this is what we're going to care about. In order for an angle to be in what we call standard position, the initial side is going to be the positive side of the x-axis, or horizontal axis, because it doesn't always have to be x, and the vertex will be at the origin. So then the terminal side will just be somewhere else. So if we draw a picture, so the initial side is always going to be the positive side of the x-axis, and then I could draw my terminal side, let's say here, this would be terminal side, and this would be my angle theta. So this is an angle in standard position. Again, the key thing is that the initial side is the positive side of the x-axis and the vertex is the origin. So then the terminal side will just be somewhere on your coordinate plane in one of the quadrants or on an actual axis. But we'll refer to angles in standard position quite often, or a lot of our definitions are going to be based on that as well. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is positive angles versus negative angles, and this has to do with the rotation or the direction. So again, if an angle is in standard position, a positive angle is going to go counterclockwise. So the two angles I've drawn for you so far have been positive angles. So if I draw my initial side, and then let's draw my terminal side, my positive angle would be this. So then negative angles are going to go clockwise. So if I draw a similar angle, but now I'm going to go this way, and I'll call it a different variable just so we don't get confused. So let's call this beta. So then theta would be a positive number, whether it's in radians or degrees, which we'll find out about in a minute. And beta would be a negative number. Again, doesn't matter if it's in radians or degrees. So positive angles counterclockwise, negative angles clockwise. Okay, so this just sums it up. We want to make sure we understand the vocabulary of initial side, terminal side, vertex of an angle, what it means for an angle to be in standard position, and then what it means for angles to be positive versus negative, and that just has to do with the rotation.